We continue to follow President Trump's condition after his doctors say his health is improving. Joining us now is Dr. Lane Rolling, a top virologist, infectious disease and trauma surgeon, here to talk more about the president's COVID-19 diagnosis. Dr. Rolling, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to be able to give you some information. I hope you're having a wonderful week.
Yes, and Dr. Rolling, first off, your reaction to the president leaving the hospital to see his supporters on the street this evening, but he's sick with a deadly virus. Is this even safe?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, he's still infectious. The virus is still in his body. And it's mandatory when people do get the disease, they have to quarantine themselves at least 14 to 21 days. Even though he's out there, greeting his supporters and stuff, the medication that they've given him, especially the dexamethasone, the steroid, is suppressing his immune system. So that's why he's feeling good, but he's still infectious and he can be a super spreader.
Now, folks are saying today's briefing about the president's medical condition raised more questions about how sick he really is. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, I think the reality is that we have such disinformation from the beginning of this whole pandemic, which is not a pandemic anymore, it's an endemic, and you have a lot of false information. The President Trump is like anybody else. He's like you, myself, a baby, black or white. That virus will affect everybody. The virus does not discriminate on people of their race, their colors, how much money you have, and he's going to go through the whole course of the virus infection from the eclipse phase to exponential phase, and he's going to go through the same process like everybody else will. He's mortal.
Now, we know that his doctors say his oxygen levels dropped twice and he had a high fever. And today he's in the car with his staff who were wearing N95 masks. But it appears the president was in a cloth mask. Does that put anyone in danger?
Oh, absolutely. And his oxygen desaturation tells you that he's a very sick man. And that's just the way it is. That's one of the major parameters that we use to measure when people do have the COVID-19 disease, or oxygen saturation. So he's infected. He's sick still, even though he's feeling good because they gave him immunosuppressive drugs that will decrease his inflammation, his reaction, but he's still virus infected, and he still has a virus in his body, and he can still infect other people.
And today we learned the president is on a number of meds, from a strong steroid to remdesivir, to help treat the virus. What does that tell us about his conditions, even though he's up moving around?
It tells you he's in a serious situation. He's mortal. He's a human being. And when you start using medication, remdesivir and steroids, that tells you have a significant problem. And this can still go either way. It's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next 48 hours to the next 5 days, even up to 14 days, that he can have a full-blown case of COVID-19 like most people do.
So even though they're hoping that he's basically released from the hospital tomorrow, we could be looking at something completely different.
Oh, absolutely. The picture can change within 72 hours. The picture can change within the next 6 hours. And he's still infectious. That virus is going to be in his body for at least the next 14 to 21 days. The medication they gave him does not kill the virus. The virus is in the president's lung cells. It's in every cell that has an ACE2 receptor in his body. That virus is in that cell, and it causes an infection, period. End of story.
Dr. Rollings, thank you so much. Don't go anywhere. More from you when we come back.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Appreciate it.
So stay with us. We'll have more from Dr. Lane Rollings on his fight to slow the spread of COVID-19 in the Black community. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Not only are we following President Trump's battle with the coronavirus, but we've also told you Black and brown communities have been heavily impacted by this deadly virus as well. Dr. Lane Rollings is back with us to talk about how he's working to help the Black community survive the virus through education. Welcome back, Dr. Rollings.
Hey, thank you very much, ma'am. I appreciate it.
So we want to talk to you about a little bit more. As a top virologist and a tropical disease expert who spent time in the Amazon studying diseases like the Covid-19, tell us about your work in fighting against the virus.
Well, my work is in fighting this particular virus, ma'am, is that I've been put on the Black Congressional Healthcare Task Force for COVID-19. And my experience working in the jungles of the Amazon and treating all types of different diseases from Ebola, dengue, and real jungles treating people. My responsibility as a biological warfare expert and military commander is to make sure that I give our people the down-to-earth information that they can study to protect themselves. Because the Black community is being decimated and will be decimated if the people do not really take this stuff seriously. So one of my responsibility as the chief medical officer for SRS is to develop protocols and procedures so people can go back to school, so people can function as new norm. Because we have to have our people, especially socially disadvantaged kids, going back to school. For example, in Lexington, Mississippi, there are 3,000 socially disadvantaged kids, Black kids, that they depend on the school for lunch. If there's no school for lunch, these kids are starving. So one of the things we have done is gone and opened up schools in Jackson, Mississippi, North Carolina, Colorado, and designing biosafety protocols that people can use to protect themselves from washing their hands to, understanding bathroom infections and stuff.
And scientists are going through clinical trials for a vaccine. What is your take on vaccine trials as it affects Black people?
Well, in this particular case, and I'm going to keep it real. I always tell people I can give you the Dr. Rowling version, or I can give you the Mickey Mouse version. But I tell people body bags are very cheap, and so my responsibility is to give you guys the truth. They're going to come up with a vaccine, but the vaccine's not going to work. And the reason why is this particular virus, the SARS-CoV virus, which is the largest RNA immunogenic virus on the planet, very pathogenic. This virus mutates every 2 weeks. This virus in itself has had over 12,000 mutations since the virus really appeared in our society 1 year ago. So my take on vaccination is that people need to wait. The Operation Warp Speed sounds very well, but we can also remember what happened with the syphilis experiment. We understand what happened with the polio vaccine in the 1950s, where they injected kids and kids died, and kids were also put in iron lungs. So as a Black physician and a grandfather, my responsibility is to make sure that people have the best information on treatment and understanding. Right now, there is no treatment for the SARS-CoV virus or the vaccination. My opinion is that they will come up with a vaccination. They were and will vaccinate people, but this vaccination will not work because this virus mutates every time. Every 2 weeks, this virus is mutating. So that's the big problem. And you really have to understand the RNA and the genetic material and understand the genetic pattern of this virus. If you don't understand the genetics, if you don't understand the pathophysiology of the virus is going to continue to do what it's going to do. So my take on vaccination is a long shot.
Well, Dr. Rowland, thanks again for your time tonight. We appreciate all of the advice you gave us tonight.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to coming back and talking about the second wave.
We'll be happy to have you.